there is nothing wrong with having a national identity. And unfortunately, in Australia, we're having an identity crisis. Once upon a time, we knew what it meant to be an Australian. Today, there are plenty of Australians, including people who have migrated and assimilated here, who understood that. The point is, why can we not point out certain facts and certain truths without being called a racist? It is true, everyone is allowed to have a homeland except for us, apparently. And there's nothing wrong with pointing out that we are taking in migrants at ungodly levels from countries that unfortunately in 2025 are finding a very hard time to assimilate to our Australian identity and our Australian culture. And it is not racist for pointing that out, because we will lose our home, we will lose our people, we will lose our culture, and that's sadly what's happening. And there's nothing wrong with saying, let's not have that.
Australia used to be the way Australia was because it used to be full of white Australians. If you import the third world into the first world will become the third world. Our past is brighter than our future. I'll repeat that. Our past is brighter than our future. You all know why that is. You know why that is? Because demographics is destiny. Flooded with people who don't think like us, act like us, behave like us. Foreigners here not to take part, to take over. 300 million. That is the number of Indians that living in India that outnumber the amount of white people in the entire world. They don't care that the white population is headed towards extinction. They don't care that Australian standard of living is dropping. They don't care about you. They're here to take everything you have at your expense. India is home for the Indians. Africa is home for Africans. And Australia is home for Aussies. White Australians, we need a home. It's time to stop immigration. It's time to take back the reins of destiny. Demographics is that destiny. Through blood and honour and sacrifice, we will have victory. Hail Australia!
Hail Australia!
Hail Australia!
Hail Australia!
Hail Australia!
Hail Australia!
You are all legends.
The video we have just watched right now is from Australia, I think. It is a protest against immigrants. Now, you have heard the video. I don't have to repeat it, but if I may point some key points, that white speaker is saying that Australia used to be Australia because we had full of white Australians. And for me, that appeal to a false golden past narrative. But in reality, personally, I think Australia always indigenous people. Okay? Thousands of years ago, before British colonization. So white Australians were settlers, but not native. Okay? Again, he's saying that if you import the third world people in your country, the first world country will become the third world. That is xenophobic. It's a xenophobic myth because migration does not downgrade nations. Okay? Immigration contributes in skills, labor, culture, and economic growth. The USA, Canada, Australia, it was built by immigrants. He's talking about demographic destiny. He's talking about India for Indians, Africa for Africans, Australia for Australians, for white Australians. I'll say that is a hypocritical claim or a hypocritical claim, because if that logic was applied consistently, I think white people could not be in Africa. Now, this kind of speech is dangerous propaganda designed to spread fear, division, hostility against immigrants. And let me speak that. I don't know what the white people are fearing. I don't know why the white Australians are fearing, because I think maybe they have fear of losing power. Maybe they have fear of becoming the minority. They have fear of erasure. They have fear of truth about history. They have fear of change of culture. Maybe they have fear of exposure, fear of justice. Because if they lose numbers and power, maybe they fear retribution. Okay? They know how much atrocities they committed slavery, colonization, land theft, apartheid. That's the video I'm going to talk. But before I continue with my commentary, I want you to watch these clips here and then we come back.
I take my child to the playground and every single other child at the playground is speaking a foreign language to their parent. My child is the only child at the playground that's speaking English. And I'm surrounded by people that are being told, oh, this is a great multicultural diversity, and it just means less white people, less white culture, and ultimately we're going to turn into global South Africa, and I will fight to stop that from happening. I had family in South Africa. I'm not letting it happen here. And so I'm trying with all my might to be peaceful and reasonable and political, but we have to protect white Australia. We have to.
So many things he said are wrong. The privilege which is coming out of him, the entitlement to think that we have to protect white Australia. In other words, we have to protect what wasn't rightfully ours, but now we are part of this land and we don't want anyone else who doesn't look like us to be here. Because when my kid goes around, when my kid goes somewhere, they have to speak another language, and I don't want that. I want them to only speak English. English is the only language, and I want people to look like me. If you don't look like me, guess what? You're not part of us. You're a second-class citizen. You know what? And you should understand, because we were here first. Well, not first, but we were here second. And because we were here second, that means we have a stronger say, because we have more power and authority now, because there's more of us. And so we got to protect what we have. You see what happened to the other people, right? You see what happened to the other people when they didn't protect their borders, even though it was taken from a colonizing standpoint, even though they're illegal immigrants, or immigrants want to come in legally to the best of their ability, fleeing war-torn nations. No, that's not enough. They aren't allowed to come here. He should be saying he wants to protect all Australians, but he says white Australia. People who look like me need a place to have, which is their home. And anyone who doesn't look like me, I'm not looking out for their well-being, because it's not Australia inclusive and everyone. It's me and people who look like me. I don't want to walk around this place looking at people and seeing other skin colors and other skin tones, and let alone speaking other languages. So you guys, you guys, get out, all right? And I'm going to fight tooth and nail, because I don't want it to be like South Africa. You see what happened there? They had a position of power, and guess what? Then they let up. And the black people, who the land was rightfully theirs, now they're taking it back. Well, I'm not going to make the same mistake. He made a threat. People are going to be like, oh, it's free speech. He's speaking his mind. Ugh. He made a low-key threat. He's basically saying, I'm being calm and you're pushing me to the limit, because my rights and what I want in my heart for people who look like me is more important than the immigrants, more important than people who don't look like me, because this is ours, even though it was taken. And I'm trying to be political, even though I'm going to have my agenda regardless, but I'll cross the line. And we have crossed the line before. We have crossed the line to take. That's why we're here. That's why we have this business. And we're going to fight and cross the line to keep. That's what I heard. What did you hear?
At some point, you have to say, no, this is mine. No one else can have this. This is going to be the country that my people have, that is going to be the place where my way of life is perpetuated, so that my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and so on, have a country in which people like them who share their identity are in charge, so that they are safe. I don't want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren becoming a persecuted, potentially minority in the country their ancestors built. That is just simply not acceptable. And that is the destiny that, if the current trajectory of things is allowed to continue, that's their destiny. I would be a shit grandparent or shit great-grandparent if I allowed that to happen. And I love them more, even though they don't exist yet, I love them more than I love these fucking random Indians coming in, who have their own country, by the way, and who, frankly, I don't like them. I don't like the way they smell, the way they look. I don't like their culture. I don't like how they talk. I don't like their way of life. And I have the right not to like them. They might not like me too. I don't care whether they like me or don't like me. I have the right not to like them. I don't have to like everyone. I want to have a country in which people like me are in charge, where my culture is maintained, where my way of life is maintained. And I want that to be passed down to my children.
In Australian schools, we learn about the White Australia policy, how it was created because of the competition between the Chinese and European miners during the gold rush, and how archaic it was and how far we've come since.
Australians are nervous about minorities who form ethnic colonies in our cities.
But that isn't the whole picture. Even though Asian representation in Australian Parliament just doubled after the last federal election, 96% of federal lawmakers are still white.
And though Australia is 17% Asian, you just don't see this in its politics.
And beyond that, the pandemic has driven a rise in anti-Asian racism as many white Australians blamed Asians, and the Chinese in particular, for COVID. So much so that the I Am Not a Virus campaign was launched to document and bear witness to this dangerous surge.
When did immigrant become such a dirty thing to be? When did my golden skin become synonymous with spreading disease?
In March of 2020, two sisters, Sophie and Rosa Doe, were crossing a street in Sydney when a teenager spat on them and accused them of bringing coronavirus to the country. She called them Asian dogs. What's even worse is this isn't a one-off. The Asian Australian Alliance recorded 377 incidents over a month and a half in 2020. 1 in 5 Chinese Australians reported being threatened or attacked during that same year because of their heritage. And this isn't happening in a vacuum. Australia has a history of racism.
While it started with the founding of Australia when white settlers brutally stole land from First Nations Australians,
it was cemented through what is called the White Australia policy. What is the White Australia policy? How did it start, and how has it affected the Australia of today? This is EST Explains. In the 1900s, the Australian government passed a series of laws actively promoting the notion of a white Australia.
As long as we possibly can, we ought to aim at having a homogeneous population.
This was intended to reduce non-white people in the country, specifically Asians, specifically the Chinese. It wasn't just one law or simple declaration, but a series of them working towards the same goal of keeping Australia white.
I am here. I am Australian. I am a member of this federal parliament. So I don't have to prove to any of you over there that I belong. I belong. And I will wave that Australian flag. What I saw on the weekend was a betrayal. It was disgusting to see what they did to the Australian flag. The flag that our diggers fought under against Nazis. So sure, we should be able to have a rational debate about migration. Sure, we should be able to do that. But rationality goes out the window when it's co-opted, when that argument is co-opted by neo-Nazis. When anti-immigrant sentiment is the business model of one nation and now the coalition. This place turns the dog whistle into a megaphone. And the people who are impacted are not people like me. It's not me. It's the little kid who's going to school. The kid who wears the hijab. The little Indian kid who plays footy on the weekend or cricket. Their parents. Those people who don't have the voice of Senator Erasure in the nation's parliament. Those are the people who are impacted. The words spoken in this chamber ricochet around this country, tearing at our social fabric, and the words get fired here. And the impacts are not felt by anyone in this chamber because we're too privileged, but it is acutely felt by people outside.
Do y'all think this is a coincidence? Because I don't think this is a coincidence. White folks are onto something. With everything that's going on right now, with what's going on in South Africa, y'all heard about that? White folks are trying to grab land in South Africa. With what's going on over there in the Middle East, white folks are trying to grab land in the Middle East. And now they're trying to reclaim Europe. The funny thing about this is Australia. How come these Australians, these white Australians, talking about they want Australia to be white again? Y'all immigrants. Watching immigrants tell other immigrants that they don't want immigrants is probably the funniest thing I have seen today. White folks are onto something. It is clear. Western civilization is on its way out. Another race is going to be the leading race in the next 50 to 100 years. They've been watching. They can tell that they're losing power. They know it. They know it. I saw a French lady say it. She said, we need to recolonize Africa, at least economically. Why? These people came to the realization that they cannot prosper without Africa. This is fear. They are scared because their future is uncertain. For the first time in human history, white folks are facing erasure. You see this? Protesting in the streets. That's what we used to do because we were being oppressed. They are being oppressed in a different way. They are uncertain of their future and they are scared. White folks are in a situation where they can actually become poor.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but why are Australians, of all people, of all nationalities, of all societies, marching against immigration? Sorry. Yeah, you want to take back Australia from people coming from overseas. Yeah. Where was your great-grandfather from? I'm sorry. Genuinely, it is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. This guy who's the let 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned, that guy, he threatened a journalist the other day for suggesting that he has Lebanese heritage, which he may or may not do, I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. Brother, you're a white Australian. Your ancestors are from Hackney. Sea of crusty white faces in the crowd who are chanting against immigration. Like, my brothers in Christ, you're not really meant to be there. You were trucked in 200 years ago by Rule Britannia because we didn't want you. People really want to show up to these little sad divorced dad protest events. They're welcome to. But Australians? White Australians? Really? Follow for more.
India is home for the Indians. Africa is home for Africans. And Australia is home for Aussies. White Australians, we need a home.
They bled for a white Australia.
Why am I seeing more and more videos of literal Yahtzees on stage in Australia screaming about how they want all the immigrants out, including the indigenous population of the land, and others cheering them on? But hey, of course, all of this is not about racism. It's not about your dislike for anybody that is not the shade of my wall here, or anybody that is not ethnically from Europe. This is simply about safe immigration and, immigration policies. So why are neo-Yahtzees overrunning burial sites of First Nations people? Like, one guy that is proudly part of the, Australian military, or like a veteran or something, was like asked, do you have any issues with, there being literal neo-Yahtzees on stage? He's like, I don't care who's up there as long as we're, aligned and have the same enemy. What enemy? You would believe that the neo-Yahtzees would be your enemy, I know that man wanted to say the HH phrase so badly in that moment. And yes, I know this is simply about, safe immigration or whatever. When somebody tried to actually show support, it was not a person of Mayo. Look how they, look how he squared up. This guy did not want to let him pass. Look at him with his little stance. This guy was like, the Australians that fought for us in World War I and II would be rolling in their graves if they could see the current state of Australia. And the interviewer was like, would they, not be kind of upset at you guys cheering for literal Yahtzees on stage, since they were the ones that fought the Yahtzees during World War II? And the guy was like, oh, yeah. I guess so. Genuinely speaking, what do you mean you want to kick out the indigenous population, the Aboriginal, the First Nations people? Do you want them to go from North Australia to, South Australia? They're all criminals. They don't know what they're doing. Mind you guys started as a prison colony. No, not everybody that was, shipped from Britain to Australia was the worst criminal ever. There were people who were, on these ships for stealing bread. But you were the criminals that the country you were from did not want. Your ancestors were discarded. And then they came to Australia to colonize, slaughter, and oppress the indigenous population. Anybody that is not a First Nations person in Australia is an immigrant, or, a direct descendant of an immigrant. You guys are what you hate. You cannot claim that you're only doing this for better policies. You are cheering on literal neo-Yahtzees on stage that are telling you we want a white Australia and nothing else.
Grand Rising Kings and Queens, welcome back to my YouTube commentary. I love you all and I thank you for always standing with me. Okay? Now, one thing for sure, the speech that I have come across from Australia, it is shocking to me because, yes, you may be protecting your country, but the speech was a little bit off. But the truth is, this is not just about Australia, okay? The same cry is echoing even in the United States. They have in the United Kingdom, I've seen they are protesting, France, Germany, and across every white nation in the planet. They are all shaking, okay? They are all tremble because they know the world is changing. And the very system they built on colonization, on slavery, on exploitation is turning against them. Their own fears are exposing their weakness. Now, according to that speech, if I may break down, this man said that if you import the third world into the first world will become the third world. What does this even mean? Do you see any meaning here? Because I don't. He is suggesting that people from Africa, people from Asia, Latin America, people of color are automatically third world. That's what he's saying. He's suggesting that their presence lowers the standard of living. The reality is opposite of what he's saying, okay? Because immigrants, to be reality, immigrants are the backbone of the economies of white nations. Immigrants are the doctors, innovators in America. Immigrants have built Silicon Valley. Immigrants have created billion-dollar companies. Immigrants have fueled growth in every sector in these white countries. So when they say that first world become third world, what are they even really meaning? Personally, I think what they are saying is that we are afraid of losing control. We are afraid that people who don't look like us will rise to power on the land we once ruled and challenged. That speaker on the first video we played said something that their past is brighter than their future. And that line, I think it means they know that the glory days of white dominance are over. Because if your past was bright, that means the past where you had all the glory, past where you are controlling, the past where you are colonizing, the past where you are oppressing. It is the same slogan behind the great replacement theory. In Europe, for example, and America, we have that theory, okay? They believe that immigrants, especially black and brown people, are replacing white population. That is same thing with this. But ask yourself this, who replaced who first? Okay? Did the Africans invade Europe and take over? Did Indians colonize Britain? Did Aboriginal Australian sail to England and take the land? You have to ask yourself, because it was white settlers who invaded Africa. It was the Americas, the Australias, New Zealand. It was they who replaced indigenous people with force, with violence, with genocide. So the hypocrisy here is so massive. If you are going to protest, you need to get your books right. You need to get your checklists right. You need to realize, are you settler or are you invader? Or are you native? Okay? Now, I'll say this. Apart from Australia, we have two in America. We see constant panic about the southern border. They are saying close the borders. Politicians scream about Mexicans, Haitians, Africans, and Central American coming into the USA. Okay? In the UK, and the Brexit campaign was fueled by fear of immigrants from Africa and Eastern Europe. You see in France, Marine Le Pen and the far right blame every problem on Muslim and African immigrants. In Germany, the rise of the Aid Party is based on anti-migrants fear. In Canada, even in liberal spaces, there are quite complaints about too many migrants challenging the culture. So, what are they afraid of? That's the question. What are they afraid of? Is it afraid of losing power? Okay? Because white nations have built a global dominance through colonialism and slavery. And it is very dangerous. When change comes, it is very dangerous because they fear losing control over politics, wealth, and culture, all of those. Do they fear becoming the minority? By 2025, the US will no longer be the majority white. In the UK, in Canada, in Australia, similar trends are happening. The reality terrifies them because they build an identity on being the majority race. What is really are they fearing? Are they fearing the economic competition? Is it culture change? Is it accountability? Because when you talk about accountability, these are the deepest fear. They know the crimes they committed during colonization. They know about the land theft, about the massacres, about slavery. So if power shifts, they fear maybe they will face justice. Now, I have listened to that speech of that white guy, and I saw a lot of hypocrisy down there because they are saying Africa is for Africans, India for Indiana, Australia is for Aussies. But what they really mean is Australia is for white Australian, okay, which erases indigenous Australians who have been there for 50,000 years, I think, or 40, thousands and thousands of years, okay? So if they truly believe in Africa for Africans, then why are European companies still controlling Africans' minerals? Why are white people still flocking to Africa? Why are European companies still controlling banks and resources? So if they truly believed in India for Indians, then they will never colonize India for more than 200 years. Brutal British. They did that. So the truth is, colonizers never believed in nations belonging to their original people. They only say that now because they feel their own grip, it is slipping. Okay? And this fear what we see in the white nations is not just isolated. Let's connect the dots here. In the USA, white nationalists march chanting, "You will not replace us." In the UK, politicians talk about controlling the borders, but that really means keeping Africans and Asians away. In France, Muslims and Africans are blamed for unemployment and crime. Okay? In Australia, they use the same rhetoric as America: stop the boats, protect our borders, preserve our culture. Canada, the so-called Freedom Convoy, had undertones of anti-migrants resentment. Okay? So everywhere, this story is the same. White nations are afraid of immigration. And I think here the fear is growing bigger because Africa is rising. Africa rising has made a lot of countries to enter cold. That is the root. Okay? Their greatest fear is not just numbers. Their greatest fear is Africa rising. They see the youth of Africa demanding liberation. They see the youth from Kenya, Nigeria, Burkina Faso. They see Pan-African unity growing with Black Americans reconnecting to Africa. They see the wealth of Africa, gold, oil, cobalt, agriculture becoming harder to exploit. They see their empire crumbling. So they fear immigrants, not just for foreigners, but they are the future. So they fear the African excellence. They fear the African melanin power and unity. They fear that one day it will completely dominate white supremacy. But family, we must see their fear as a confirmation of our power. We must not belittle ourselves as Black people. Their fear is our power. It confirmed that we were weak. It confirmed that if we were weak, they could not panic. If we were powerless, they could not cry about demographic. If we were irrelevant, they could not make speeches about extinction. So they fear, or their fear is our proof that we were right. Their fear is our proof that we are strong. So this is why we must unite. Black people from Africa, from America, Caribbean, from Europe, we must see ourselves as one. We must invest in ourselves, in our land, and in our culture. We must reject the lies they told us about being inferior, because now they're admiring with their own mouths. They're admitting with their own mouth that we are the ones shaping the future as Black people. Okay? And one of the most dangerous lies told by colonizers is this idea of the first world versus the third world, I think. Because, for example, that man in that Australian speech repeated it as if it was unquestionable truth. But what does first world really mean? If I have to ask, okay? That it was Cold War label. And it was a Cold War label. America and its allies, they were called the first world. Okay? The Soviet Union was the second world. And the rest, mainly Africa, Asia, and Latin America, were labeled as third world. Okay? Now, when you look closer, Africa is the richest continent in natural resources. Gold, oil, name them. Okay? India has one of the oldest civilizations in the world with mathematics, medicine, and philosophy. Okay? And that Europe only later discovered what is in India. So the so-called third world gave birth to civilization, itself. Egypt gave birth to civilization. Nubia, Ethiopia, Mesopotamia. So when white people cry that immigrants from the third world, they will come here, destroy the first world, they are really insulting the foundation of human progress. Because without Africa, there will be no Europe. Without Africa or without Asia, there will be no America. Without the Caribbean, there will not be Western world. Okay? So the first world only exists because of the blood and resources from the third world. Do you hear me? The first world only stand because of the third world, or the so-called third world. Now, when I go to America, the panic has reached an extreme level in America. It's not only in Australia. Even in America, the panic has feel on the, we call him Fika Wako. Why? Because white Americans are obsessed with the southern border right now. They can't imagine caravans of Mexicans, Haitians, Africans, and Central Americans invading. They build walls, they deploy troops, and scream about illegals, But what they won't admit is that their own ancestors were the original illegals. Okay? The Mayflower did not ask for permission for Native Americans. The colonizers did not ask for missions or did not ask for visas before landing to America. They just landed and they unalived people and they took. And now their descendants want to act like they are the gatekeepers of the stolen land. So they always fear numbers. By 2045, the US census projects that white people will no longer be majority, and that's what they fear, okay? That's what they fear. I love history, and on history, I'll say this. In 1800s, America feared Irish and Italian immigrants, and they said that Irish were dirty and criminal, you know. They said Italians will destroy American culture. Now both groups are considered white, okay? In Australia, they feared Chinese immigrants during the gold rush, okay? They passed laws to exclude them. In the UK, and African immigrants, after World War II, they said that they will destroy blackness. So every generation, they fear the new immigrants. So I'll say this. Africa, we have a role in this panic, because we must understand that Africa sits on the heart of this fear. Why? Because Africa is the youngest continent with the fastest growing population. And by 2050, in 4 people on the earth will be African, okay? So they fear African immigration because it represents not just numbers, but power, okay? And African immigrants excel everywhere they could go. Nigerians in America are among the most educated groups. So that's what they fear, okay? That's what they fear. Now, tell me in the comment section what do you think about this video. And I hope you will share, you will comment and like. And until next episode, I say peace out.